A storm of the century hits Moscow. Nizhny Novgorod launches a mysterious drone experiment. A new Russian car is introduced and it's a beauty. You'll be surprised. Real cost of mortgage in Russia is revealed, and it's shocking. In Irkutsk, money allocated to fix schools are given to the war. Russian parliament declares war on electric scooters. Literally, Russian parliament declares war on Apple iPhones too. Beware of your emojis now, because in Russia, they can land you into a prison for a long time. The government runs out of money for prosthetics for soldiers. And the biggest news of the week is the Russian top officials start telling the truth on current situation in Russia. And it's pretty scary. Howdy, howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Fridays. I give you crazy news update every single Friday, straight out of the mad circus that Russia has become. But first things first, there's no such absurdity that could not be realized in Russia these days. Please remember that. In the news, well, I call them crazy Friday news update from Russia, crazy news from Russia. The news of Russia that matter and that you will not find in any mainstream media, but that doesn't make them any less crazy. Today's news update is special. For the longest time, I was forecasting things about Russian economy, and my forecasts have always been dark. I was given insights of why the economy was going to crash and details like that. But I don't have to do that any longer. Now I just let Russian officials speak. Things are so bad that they can't sugarcoat any longer. You will understand at the end of this stream of what I mean. But I'd like to start with a fresh Putin joke, as usual. Do you know what the Russian paradox is? It's when Putin's friends steal, but Navalny's friends get arrested and go to prison. Now, straight to the news. And let me start this week's update with Mother Nature news. A heavy rain, more like a hurricane, hit Moscow last week. And folks, I have not seen anything like that before.
Офигеть, что творится. Офигеть вообще. Что творится здесь.
This is Moscow last week.
Обалдеть вообще.
If only they had more municipal workers to clean and fix everything after that torrential downpour or hurricane or whatever. But this is 2024, and they send everyone they catch on the streets to the front lines. Another news is both interesting and innovative. Yes, we have many of those today, interesting and innovative. And this particular news comes from the city of Nizhny Novgorod. Nizhny Novgorod is a city in the province in central Russia. The province's Ministry of Economic Development proposes to conduct an innovative experiment in Nizhny Novgorod. Yes. The kind of experiment that would make world news headlines. The kind of experiment that would put Russia on the world's map of technological superiority. That would make Russian taxpayers proud, you know. The ministry folks suggest delivering cargo using drones without human pilots. Wow! I think that's a brilliant idea. Nizhny drones will transport cargo loads up to 30 kilos or 60 pounds. What a coincidence. A perfect payload, you know? Great demand for them is expected in the future. Nizhny Novgorod regional government will be in charge, of course. It's regional center for support and coordination of domestic digital technologies and developers. That's a tough name to pronounce. Gorky Tech will become the operator of the experiment site and will be assisted by private companies such as Aeromax, Flydrone, and others. A research and production facility for the development and maintenance of unmanned drones will be established. The experiment is expected to begin before the end of this year, and it will last for 3 years. And yes, one more thing. The drones will have to be unmanned, no people. Now, that's very, very important. Why? Because currently there is another experiment happening in the very same place in Nizhny Novgorod, and the very same organizations are in charge. You see, them good technologically advanced Nizhnygorodians are already moving cargo loads with drones, but they still use humans. 2 operators are required for every flight. One operator lifts a drone and flies to a destination, and the second operator lands the drone. Why they need 2 people for that? I don't know that. Perhaps first operator gets tired quickly and they take turns, you know, take naps. Well, we gotta ask that the good Nizhnygorodians. This experiment has already been going on for quite some time, and it's involved many companies and numerous people. Very many people. And the ministry decided to conduct another experiment to drop the humans out of the picture and make autonomous drones. And that's by itself a very labor-consuming project. After all, you need to design and build the research facility, to hire more people, to sign contracts, more contracts with more companies, and of course you have to keep the drone operators, the humans, on the payroll in case manual flights needed, manual operations needed. But only for the duration of the experiment, only for 3 years. Hey, what's the big deal, right? Keep everyone and make it a bigger operation. For 3 years only, experiment. It's a brilliant project. That's exactly what Russia needs right now. It needs to spend billions of rubles of the taxpayers' money and years to come up with self-flying drones. I love it. That's really Russia is getting up from its knees, you know, keeping all this sovereignty. Russia's great. Let's make Russia great again. But there are some people in Russia who don't think it's a great idea, who don't love it like I do. They say, why don't you just go to AliExpress.com and order the drones that already fly autonomously? No need to spend billions of rubles and years. What a bunch of naive people. How can they? The reason is not to steal, not to spend taxpayers billions. Well, that too. But everyone who is involved into high-tech research, especially into the research of drones, so needed for the war, they get immunity from the mobilization. Imagine hundreds of positions that come with the immunity, and that can be exchanged for cash or for goodies by those who are in charge of hiring and firing people and getting the companies on board. So imagine, ching, 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 them good, honest ministry folks. I have a suggestion for you. Add third drone operator for every flight, just for the reserves, in case something happens to the other two drone operators. That will instantly give you more immunities to more immunities. Another news is about Russian cars. And, I usually talk about cars a lot. Guilty as charged. I love cars. I love driving. I love fixing cars. My first car was Russian. It was, Moskvich. Now I'm looking at it. Oh, it's pretty ugly car, but that's my first car. Well, not this particular. It was a green color, okay? But it's identical. And I loved it. It was love at first sight. First car gave me this feeling of freedom, the sense of I could go anywhere I wanted. I was absolutely free of. Do you remember your first car? Let me know in the comments what it was. You just saw mine. That love did not last long, let me tell you. I still have good feelings and emotions about driving, about having freedom, but I don't think much of the car itself. Later, I drove real nice cars. I bought myself an Audi, and I owned a Mercedes for about 10 years. But then my first German car was an Audi A6. Great car. Great car. I loved it. But I could be in the minority in Russia. Some consumers, perhaps a lot, like Russian cars, and they prefer them to German cars. They say that out loud, too. That's one of Russian car owners sharing his opinion about owning Russian cars and comparing them to the German cars. Well, I'm telling you, folks, I am really an unusual Russian. I prefer English tea to vodka and BMW, Audi, and Mercedes to Lada. I mean, what kind of a Russian I am? No good. Suspicious, I know, very suspicious. And this strangeness of mine blows my cover. Russians would instantly pick up that there's something very strange about me, that I don't want to support the war and things like that. But if I were still in Russia, I would pretend and cover myself up, probably. A tea? An English tea? Comrade, give me some of that Stoli. You thinking of buying an Audi? What? No, I would never do that. That Audi crap, I would never drive it, and if they give it to me for free, even brand new one, or even if pay me Deutschmarks on top of that. Lada, comrade, only Lada, one love. And Ladas they have, let me tell you. Actually, the next news is about Lada. A new Lada. I kid you not, they just released new Lada. No one expected it, okay? Everyone, myself included, saying, oh, Russian car making industry is dead, in trouble, and all, Constantine, he make mistakes all the time. What do you think? Russians just talk the talk? No. Russians, they walk the walk. They design and build new cars, and very fast. The Moscow Mule, remember that beauty? Well, that's one more reason for me to bring it up. I just love it, okay? Then, new Moskvich smells Chinese, but hey, who cares? Then all-electric Atom, a lot of taxpayers' money has been spent on that, but it exists only on paper. But hey, who cares? It exists on paper, but it exists, okay? And then Volga, they announced plans to revive Volga. they started design, I think. The new model is scheduled to come in around 2036. And a new Lada has just been released. I kid you not, this is it. This is a brand new Lada Niva Sport. Lada just announced that it has started preparations for mass production of this new model. Check this out. This is a new model. A beauty, ain't it? Look at the breakthrough shape. Look at sports design. I personally like it. Look at the wheels. I like it. I like the car. Only after seeing that picture for quite some time, I was staring at it and something doesn't let me sleep right. Some kind of a distant memory, you know? Some image way back from the USSR. What is that? What is that? Ah, that's what it is. This is Lada Niva, circa 1977. This is the Soviet advertisement of the new model Lada.
Весеннее половодье не преграда для этой машины. В воде она не заглохнет, и вы переправитесь вброд, как говорят, не замочив ног. Маневренность этого автомобиля не нуждается в комментариях и говорит сама за себя. Попробуйте-ка развернуться на такой вот узкой дороге, да еще зажатой с обеих сторон снежными валами.
Folks, I don't really understand why they needed to advertise it, because you couldn't buy it anyway. And like the wait was like 15 years. I guess they advertised for the same reason. They're building a brand new drone research facility in Nizhny. Well, I think you've seen enough. That's old good Lada Niva. Well, the production started on April 5th, 1977. But hey, what do I know? This isn't Niva. This is a completely new model. This is Niva Sport. What's the difference? The wheels! The wheels are new design. Made in China, by the way. Folks, this is so absurd. For me, for the Russian who has seen pretty unbelievable stuff in his life, who has seen the USSR collapse, who has seen New Russia was born and grew up and collapsed again, this is pretty unbelievable. This Lada thing is hard to believe. They're selling it as a brand freaking new model. What's even more unbelievable, Russians will be buying it. Another automotive news. The first Chinese car, Xiaomi SU7, all-electric car, it was brought to Russia. And the sales launch soon will start, you know. I can't say much about this car. It looks okay. Some folks might like it. I've never heard of Xiaomi cars. I've seen and I've heard much of Xiaomi gadgets, telephones, you know, notebooks, things like that, but not cars. I didn't even know that they produce cars. Oh, heck. I'm not an authority on Chinese cars. What's more interesting is that in Moscow, this car price is 7.9 million rubles. And in China, it's sold for 3.9 million. 7.9 to 3.9. That's more than double. If you want to understand the attitude of the Chinese toward Russians, look at the prices. The prices speak better than words. Moving on to the economic news. As economist, I am fascinated with key interest rate. It's one of the most powerful tools to regulate economies that central banks have. Russia's key interest rate is at 16% right now, third highest in the world. It's bad, bad, bad. I want to make a point. It points out to many troubles in the economy. But that's Konstantin the economist speaking. What does high interest key rate mean for regular folks? For the Russians like you and me. Let's do some math now. Let's imagine you want to buy an apartment in Moscow and take a mortgage. A small apartment in Moscow, say 60 square meters or 600 square feet, costs around 25 million rubles. That's around 270,000 American dollars right now. The key interest rate is 16%, so you might have a chance to receive a mortgage at 18% at a commercial bank. Say you take it for 30 years. Your monthly payment would be 376,000 rubles. That's more than 90% of Russians make. It's simply unaffordable. And get this, in 30 years, you would pay 108 millions on top of what your mortgage would be. So you, at the key interest rate of 16%, you would pay 133 million rubles for your property that cost 25 million rubles. For something that costs 25 million, in 30 years, you will pay 133 million with the key interest rate of 16%. And this has been a very simple explanation of what 16% key interest rate is. And in 2 weeks, it will be raised significantly by 2% to 18%. Way to go, Russia! Let's move to Irkutsk province, Russia's far east. That's where the next news comes from. Irkutsk deputy, Eduard Demin, deputy of the local legislation assembly, Eduard Demin, announced that, how do I approach this? The modernization and renovation program of schools in the province has been postponed for a year, until 2025. And the good deputy even explained why such postponement is taking place. He said that fixing and renovating schools is not a priority any longer. There are other, more pressing issues. All the funds allocated in the province budget for schools will be directed as payments to the participants of the SVO, what in Russia they call the war, the special military operation. Its real name is war. So all the payments will be directed to the participants of the war and their families. The sign-up bonuses, the compensation to families who receive coffins, coming back instead of men, for the disabilities, children, schools, not the priority any longer. Welcome to Russia 2024. And speaking of the sign-up bonuses, that's the next news. I want to share something with you that I find very informative. Remember, if you watch my streams, you might remember that I always say, look at the small details. Because when you have many small details, they give you a big picture. So let's talk about a small detail. Sign-up bonus. whoever wants to volunteer, sign up and sign a contract with the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation to go so-called to protect Russia from Ukraine, from NATO on the soil of Ukraine, they get sign-up bonus. The size of the sign-up bonus for those Russians who go to Ukraine, the volunteers, these bonuses vary from province to province. And they vary significantly. And the funny thing is, the poorer people live in the province, the poorer the province is, the more bonuses it gives. Okay. So the sign-up bonuses for those Russian men, let me show you. This is a very usual picture that you see in Russian cities, on Russian streets. That's huge billboards advertising. Sign up and you will get this particular billboard says 1,100,000 rubles. And every month you will be receiving 210,000 rubles tax-free. So the amount stated at the billboard is 1,100,000 rubles. The amounts started at around 100,000 rubles back in 2022. Now, 5 provinces of Russia, their local governments pay 1,305,000 rubles to everyone who signs up. And there are rumors, unconfirmed, I haven't seen it yet, but I'm pretty sure that they're not too far from the truth. So there are rumors that one of the provinces just upped the bonus to 1.5 million rubles. What does it mean? Why the sign-up bonus keeps rising in most of provinces? Supply and demand. Folks, sorry, but it's me, the economist, speaking again. The supply of soldiers is shrinking, so they try to increase the demand for signing up by giving people astronomical money. See for yourself. An excellent salary in Russia, not in Moscow, not in St. Petersburg, but in Russia, is 40,000 rubles, around $500 per month. So a Russian man receives 37 monthly salaries at once when he signs up, and probably even more now. 37 monthly salaries. And Putin keeps saying that there's enough soldiers at the front lines and no new mobilization is needed. And at the same time, he keeps on paying more and more. This is a classic example when 2 and 2 do not make 4. But I guess everything is going according to Putin's plan. Before moving to the next news, I want to thank you, those of you who bought me coffees at buymeacoffee.com. Your support shows that you value my work highly, and just know that it inspires me and gives me energy to move forward. So thank you so very much. And the next news comes from Russian Parliament. Oh, it's always full of news. The Parliament just proposed to send electric scooters to the war zone. The Senator Maxim Ivanov assured that there are not enough of scooters at the front lines. They can be used as for transporting grenade launchers, or to move silently between positions, or to transport anti-tank mines, and for other wonderful things, according to the good senator. Folks, I don't really know what to say, except that those people in the parliament, they live in a parallel reality. They don't live in real world. They don't live in Russia. The next news also comes from the parliament, from its upper chamber. A senator proposed to create a law that would allow to imprison Russians for posting emojis. Yes. Senator Yelena Sidorenko suggested follow the example of Belarus and to recognize some emojis as extremist. I quote the good senator, "Today, no one doubts that the reposts of emojis are socially dangerous. Especially emojis. We are not talking about likes or dislikes, which courts sometimes recognize as legally significant actions, but about pictures that can be radical in nature. Legal responsibility should be provided for such pictures." I unquote. I don't know what to say. It's embarrassing, you know. Why don't they just jump to people's looks, you know, how people look? You know, the way they look. You know, look like that. Oh, he just gave me a mean look. He is not patriotic enough. 7 years of prison to this guy. But do you know what's actually satirical about it? I'm sorry. Yelena Sidorenko, the senator who suggested to punish for posting emojis, she is a member of the Council for the Development of Civil Society and Human Rights under the President of Russia. She's supposed to protect freedoms and human rights. You know, folks, I think they're just trolling us, okay? I don't think they're serious in the laws and their statements. They're just trolling us. They make bets how we're gonna take that, and they're laughing hysterically somewhere behind the curtains. And I think this is how Russia works these days, you know. Well, by the way, there will be many more news like that. If you want to keep up with other breaking news from Russia, become patron of Inside Russia. Every single day, I carefully select and post 9 news that I find important with my commentaries and analysis, so they'll keep you informed on everything you wanted to know about Russia, but always were afraid to ask. So become patron at patreon.com and get access to news that matter. I'm gonna put the link down below. And the next news is I'm using unveiled. It's kind of who do you think you are type of news. Russian Senator Artem Sheikin proposed to ban iPhone smartphones in Russia if Apple does not allow applications to be installed through a Russian store called Russtore. On June 24th, a bill was submitted to the parliament on banning discrimination against applications of Russian developers in foreign online app stores. Its authors are Senators Sheikin and Klishas, as well as Senator Lugovoy. And I'll remind you that the Senator Lugovoy is wanted by the UK for murdering Alexander Litvinenko. The explanatory note of the proposed bill, says that some device manufacturers, primarily Apple, prohibits the installation of applications from independent Russian sources onto its smartphones and tablets. Well, I really like how they say independent Russian sources. If Apple were to allow that, and I hope it never does, That independent Russian source, of course, would be, a part of the KGB. And it would be installing things on the smartphones of people, not just in Russia, but all over the world, left and right, all these wonderful things. Independent, I'm pretty sure. Well, good Russian senators, you go ahead and ban the sales of iPhones in Russia. It won't change much anything, as Apple banned selling its iPhones in Russia itself in March of 2022. So you cannot buy an iPhone in Russia legally. Whatever is on sale is brought to Russia without Apple authorization and knowledge. You want to ban Apple? You're a little too late, because Apple banned you over 2 years ago. Boy, what happened to my country? It's descending into darkness. And it's not my opinion. Look at this news. They're unbelievable. The next news comes from, again, the Russian state. Let's make Russia great again. The Russian federal budget has run out of funds for prosthetics for the soldiers. At the end of last year, more than 466,000 disabled people were registered with the Social and Pension Insurance Fund, that state organization that pays for prosthetics, special equipment, and stuff like that. So 466,000 people, new people, need something. Wheelchairs, prostheses, and other special equipment. This indicator has become a record for the record for the entire time of statistics collected in this area, and they started collecting them in 2012. Since then, and before the war, the number of people who needed rehabilitation, special equipment, and facilities has increased by no more than 7%, from 307 to 331,000 people. Last year, it increased by 42%, namely by 137,000 people. In addition, in 2023, 2.17 million men with disabilities aged 31 to 59 were registered in Russia, and this is the record number according to Rosstat data. In 2022, there were 1.67 million men with disabilities in this age category. Thus, the growth for the year amounted to 30%. 507,000 people were added. I quote a demographic scientist, Alexei Raksha, a pretty famous guy in Russia. He's one of the best scientists researching what's going on with Russian demographics. So I quote Alexei Raksha. Demographic scientists attribute the increase in the number of men with disabilities to the war. I think there are actually tens of thousands, if not hundreds, of military disabled now. And if the official data is less than that number, it means that the real data is partially or completely hidden. And again, that's one of the most reputable demographic scientists in Russia speaking. Well, I guess everything is going according to Putin's plan. The next news are, three news are kind of crazy. Well, again, all the news coming out of Russia now are kind of crazy. Russian Senator Vitaly Milonov called for regulating lip augmentation for women. The guy has proposed many weird things over the past year. And this week, he didn't disappoint us. I guess he doesn't like them big lips. Former head of the Department for Supervision of Compliance with Federal Legislation of Moscow's prosecutor's office, Yevgeny Manerkin, was scammed for 20 million rubles, that's 220,000 US dollars. So he was scammed by online scammers. Well, things happen, you know. There's a question, where did he get all those 20 million rubles? Because, you know, the government officials don't earn that much. But I guess I'm the only Russian who's asking this question. No one else cares. What's interesting, really interesting, and I'm using that in 2015, Manerkin made a series of public lectures advising and teaching Russians how not to fall for the tricks of scammers. It's not a joke. He did that. The head of the Union of Gardeners of Moscow region, Russian Senator Nikita Chaplin, said, I quote, "A Russian family can be fed by a vegetable garden with an area of at least ranging from 150 to 300 square meters. That's 1,500 to 1,300 square feet. Such harvest can last for a year and feed a family of 4 people." You know, well, first of all, I didn't even know that a union of gardeners existed in the Russian parliament. I'm telling you, they live in a parallel reality. But I remember well, very well, how much land can feed a family of 3. 600 meters or 6,000 square feet give enough potatoes to feed a family of 3 for about 3 to 4 months. I remember oh so well, because when I was young, when I was a child growing up, we had those 600 square meters in use. It didn't belong to us, but, you know, we could use it to plant potatoes in May, in April, and harvest them in August. And let me tell you something. Those 600 square meters, they do not give you much to last. Maximum 4 months of eating potatoes. You can harvest 4 to 5 or perhaps a couple more sacks of potatoes. But when potatoes is all you eat, or mostly all you eat, family of 3, they don't last you for the entire winter. I know that quite well. I spent, at least I remember, about 13 winters of doing that. And by the way, I hate planting potatoes and harvesting them. I hate that. Well, I doubt that the head of the Union of Gardeners, the good Senator Chaplin, has ever set foot to any garden, for he is absolutely clueless. I'm curious why he states that he tells something he doesn't know. He makes a fool out of himself. Oh well, let's move to the next news, which is fire. Love when propaganda starts telling the truth. A little reminder. The word war is banned in Russia. What's going on in Ukraine, a Russian state calls the SVO, the Special Military Operation. It's not a war, according to Russian law. If an ordinary Russian, an ordinary person calls this its real name, the war, 7 years in prison, just like that. And there have been dozens of people, perhaps hundreds, already serving time for simply calling the war war. Please check these top propaganda people, speak at Solovyov Live, and that's the show moderated by Solovyov himself, the top propagandist in Russia. And this was live for the entire Russia on the channel Россия 1. Check it out.
На мой взгляд, все-таки надо каким-то образом вот эту имитацию мирной жизни, которая все-таки у нас происходит, она вроде бы неплохая, но мне кажется, она все-таки уже не очень уместна на фоне тех событий, которые наблюдаем, на фоне гибели детей, постоянной гибели гражданских лиц. Это война, настоящая война, беспощадная и жестокая. Мы должны к этому именно так относиться.
I love when propagandists speak the truth. You know, at the same time, it's very, very sad that many people are serving time at maximum security prisons for the very same, for saying what that fella, one of the top propagandists, just said. He called the war war. He did it live for the entire Russia. Nothing happens to him. But hundreds of people are serving time. Their lives have been broken. And the next news is fighting. Oh, I love when they fight. There's the more the merrier. The spiders in the jar. Oh, I love watching them. I'll give a stage to the head of an investigative committee, Alexander Bastrykin, one of the top siloviki guy, one of the, I would say one of the top, most powerful men in the entire country. See him speak at St. Petersburg Legislative Forum.
Незаконные мигранты, законно находящиеся, больше преступлений, чем законные мигранты. Ну и так дальше. Не буду загружать, вот в презентации там это можно будет посмотреть. Но я полагаю, самое главное, изменить политику, миграционную политику России. Точно обосновать необходимость, а может быть даже вообще сделать так, чтобы мы за счет внутренних ресурсов, о которых я сказал, за счет внутренней миграции решали свои экономические, политические, национальные и другие проблемы. Очень бы хотелось узнать, когда хорошие законы примет наша государственная дура. Извините, я в комментарии.
Спасибо, услышала.
You see, it's actually quite unbelievable. And this is huge. The words in Russian language rhyme. The state parliament, Russian parliament, is called in Russian Государственная Дума. Duma. And what Bastrykin named this institution, Государственная Дура, the stupid, the fool. So you see, it kind of rhymes, and he says, oh, slip of the tongue, but it wasn't. Duma, Dura, okay? That is a huge insult to the parliament and to all the senators. And boy, a major storm followed. You see, Bastrykin did it on purpose. He knew exactly what he was talking about. He did not slip. It wasn't slip of the tongue. He meant it. And he has a reason. The reason we're going to find out soon. And the speaker of lower chamber of Государственная Дума took it seriously and personally. He got very insulted and he started fighting back. And quite a few senators jumped on saying, hey, this fella, who does he think he is? Well, he's a head of the investigative committee. He has enough power to put every single senator into prison. So that guy insulted not Государственная Дума, not the parliament, but all the voters of Russian Federation because they voted for us. Okay, so They recalled the waters exists. Okay, it's pretty amazing. But anyway, for the past day, there has been fight going on back and forth. The state senators are trying to force Bastrikin to apologize, and he shows them middle finger. So, I love it. It means that the fight is on. It means that this vertical of power, this strong political model that Vladimir Putin has built, it's feverish. It's shaking, you know. The vertical of power is getting weaker. They fight inside, and then by fighting, they weaken the foundation. It's the tsunami. That's what I've been talking about. This is it. It's the tsunami, and it concerns not just two folks who are getting back and forth at each other. It concerns everyone. Big changes are being brewed in Russia. Okay. I want you to mark my words on that, okay? Before we move to the last news, I would like to ask you a favor. Please let me know what you think of this news. What is this election? Did you like them? Anything you liked more? Perhaps anything you liked less, and perhaps something you didn't like at all? Please let me know down in the comments after I am done with this live stream. I appreciate the feedback very much. I would like to improve the news selection, and it's very important for me to know what you think. So, thank you so very much. And the last news of today's update, this last news makes it to the Crazy Russian News Hall of Fame, without a doubt. Prepare yourself. Russian officials of the highest level, they start speaking up the truth. Finally, they... All right, let's just see what some people said this past week. I'll start with the central bank. The central bank announced the threat of death of the Russian economy due to the international sanctions. A new wave of Western sanctions with massive blocking of bank payments, including bank payments through the countries that are considered friendly by Russia, could lead to the death of the Russian economy. This was announced on Wednesday at the session of the St. Petersburg Legislative Forum by the First Deputy Vladimir Chistyukhin, the First Deputy Chairman of Central Bank of Russia. This guy right here. He's one of the top executives of Russia's central bank. According to him, it is necessary to solve problems with payments as soon as possible and not to rule out even exotic or outdated mechanisms. I quote, "What seemed to us yesterday as unpopular and archaic, barter deals, swaps, some clearing systems, the use of cryptocurrency, now everything needs to be tested, everything needs to be tried, because if there are no normal payments for products, for foreign economic activity, for our exports and imports, and for us, this is death." Since the beginning of winter, Russian companies have faced problems in transacting with foreign banks, primarily Turkish and Chinese. The trouble started shortly after the US President Joe Biden expanded the powers of the US Treasury and allowed it to disconnect any banks around the world from dollar settlements for helping Russian military-industrial complex. Banks in Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, the key hubs of parallel imports to Russia, began blocking money transfers. Next, the Bank of China, the main buyer of Russian oil and the largest supplier of imported goods to Russian markets, joined the financial blockade. I fully agree with Chistyukhin. About 5 months ago, I identified it as the biggest trouble for the Russian economy, the biggest threat. And I kept on bringing it up. The problem was greatly downplayed in Russia by pretty much everyone. But now, the executives of Russia's central bank start telling the truth. In words that I actually have used all along. I say economic tsunami, he says economic death, but it's the same thing, just two different words, same meaning. It's one of those cases when me telling "told you so" would be a gross understatement, you know. Now, the next news. Federal budget deficit of Russia in April, from January to April, amounted to 3.9 trillion rubles, according to the Federal Treasury of Russian Federation. In early April, the Ministry of Finance was given the numbers of the deficit of absolutely different numbers of 1.4 to 1.5 trillion rubles. And in June, they gave the more truthful numbers, 3.96, almost 4 trillion. Boy, was I telling about that or what? The next news, the shortage of personnel of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the Russian Federation, that's the federal police, is currently more than 150,000 people. The shortage of precinct officers in some regions actually reaches 75%. That's according to the Speaker of the Parliament's upper chamber, Valentina Matvienko. Let me quote Matvienko. Usually one precinct officer works for 4, sometimes for 10 officers, while receiving absolutely uncompetitive salary, often less than a courier or a taxi driver. Unquote. In St. Petersburg, they started, Valentina Matvienko is originally from St. Petersburg, as most of people who are ruling Russia now, because Vladimir Putin is from St. Petersburg. So people in St. Pete, they start telling the truth. And I absolutely believe Valentina Matvienko. I think that she's right on. Perhaps she's even making the situation look a little better than it is, but she's somewhere there. And more information comes from St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg, they talk about shortage of men in general. According to the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, Belsky, 2/3 of city's residents are women and 1/3 are men. Now, think about this number. 2/3 are women and 1/3 are men. Now, the authorities are thinking about how to attract men into the city of St. Petersburg. So women will be able to start families and have babies. To solve the problem, the government proposes to open more military schools in St. Petersburg. Well, you know what? Good luck with that. The shortage of car mechanics in Russia has become critical. The economy lacks more than, listen to this, 500,000 people, mechanics, according to the CEO of KAMAZ, Russian truck manufacturer. I wonder, I have two questions. First question, why didn't good CEO of KAMAZ speak about that before Putin's elections? Why was he keeping silent? And now all of a sudden he goes around and tells about 500,000 mechanics are missing. And the second question is, I wonder where all the mechanics are. Perhaps in the West, fighting in Ukraine. And the next news, to me, it's the biggest and most important. The shortage of IT specialists in Russia now amounts to more than 1 million people, said the head of Sberbank, it's Russia's biggest bank, German Gref. The guy, one of Putin's friends, his former colleague, he was a minister of economic development of Russian Federation, and then he became the CEO of Sberbank, and he's been there for 15 years or so. It will be not possible to fill this deficit in the coming years. That's what Gref believes. I quote, according to all our estimates, for about 5 to 6 years ahead, we can estimate, the shortage of specialists in the field of digital technologies will only increase. I unquote. So no matter what they do, no matter how hard they try, they are losing programmers, developers, IT specialists. 1 million people. Again, I've been talking about it for the past 2 years. I've been telling how many people have left. And I know because I'm a witness. I am seeing all this. Every third person here in Tashkent who has fled Russia is an IT specialist because it's easy for them to find remote jobs. It's probably the easiest profession for moving to a different country. The demand is high. They get good salaries anywhere they go. Every single day we have tons of people at breakfast, I would say 1/3. And if I ever have a computer question, all I have to do is who can help me out? And there would be few people volunteering and they would know everything about computers. And yes, this is a huge problem for Russia. Again, I've been talking about that for the past 2 years, and it was greatly downplayed. And now German Gref comes out and says that, hey, we're missing 1 million people. Like he didn't know a few months ago that they were missing 1 million people. No, he was not talking about that. Now, all of a sudden, they have all started telling the truth. All simultaneously. For one simple reason. Things are so bad, they cannot sugarcoat them anymore. Vladimir Putin was announced the president again in May, and that's it. They can speak. They cannot sugarcoat anymore. And even if they wanted to, they can't. The tsunami is here. The Titanic has taken water, it's submerged, and it's going down, and the speed is increasing. One thing I'd like to tell you, tune in to Russian news more now, because there will be more and more news coming every single day. And I want to repeat one more time, please mark my words down, folks, write them down. Ukraine's victory will not come from the front lines. Instead, it will come from the inside Russia. And we start seeing that happening right now. And now I would like to see, I want you to see what was the real reason I returned to Russia after spending 9 years in America. Here at this link, I tell my story. Check it out.